Run, river, run, run through the hills. Run, river, run to the sea. Run, river, run to your place beneath the sun. Run, river, run over me.
Hi, this is Jan Lewis. Welcome to be my guest. Today we have from Attleboro, Mass, we have Lindsay Bartholomew. And Lindsay has written a children's book, which is, well, shall I say adorable? Lindsay, did you do the cover yourself?
I worked with a wonderful illustrator named Sequoia Bostic, who was great. She took a lot of my ideas. I had this idea of it being this mother and daughter who go on an adventure in their minds and their imaginations at bedtime, and this idea of sort of busting through the page, busting through one idea into the next, and that's where you see the sort of torn paper effect.
I love you bigger than everything that's big. How many of us moms, right, have felt like saying that when they're real little? I love you bigger than anything. So this is the mom with her little girl. And when did you write the book?
It's been a couple of years ago now, because the process of finding a publisher, finding an illustrator, working with the illustrator, getting it all done, getting it out there, took a while.
You decided to go with a publisher.
Yes. Yep. But the inspiration behind the book and the story and the sort of origin story of it was my daughter and I just saying goodnight to each other.
Yeah.
And it just became this sort of, like, every night we'd think of something else. Say, I love you bigger than Jupiter. My background is astronomy, so I would talk about space a lot. And then we went to New York City one weekend, and she said, I love you bigger than the Empire State Building. And every night it was something different. And then one day one of us said, I love you bigger than everything that's big. And I immediately thought, like, story, book, other people maybe can relate to this. And so that was the inspiration behind it.
So actually, your cool daughter could take a lot of credit for this.
Yes, absolutely.
You have two little ones, and they're how old?
I do. One of them is about to be 8, and the other one just recently turned 4.
4. Which is the one that inspired the book?
The one who almost turned 8.
The one that turned 8.
Yeah. So now my younger daughter wants me to write a book.
Oh, I bet.
With her.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
What made you decide to not self-publish? It's easier.
Actually, I don't have any idea what any of this process was. It was a learning curve from the get-go. And I really wanted a physical book that was in front of me, and I guess I had in mind what the traditional process might have been, so I just sort of went that route.
It's so cute. It starts off bigger than everything that's big, bigger than the planet, bigger than the sun and the stars, bigger than the moon and even Mars. Whoever this illustrator is, let me see. Sequoia Bostic. Sequoia, you did an ace job on this.
Yeah, she really captured the expressiveness. That's
How'd
one
you
of the
find
things.
her?
Yeah, my brother had been an artist in the Cleveland, Ohio area, where I'm from originally.
Yeah.
And we lost him several years ago after a brain injury to a car accident. But I had this idea of maybe bringing a little bit of his world into the book, so I contacted someone that he knew in the art community in Cleveland and said, do you know of any illustrators I could work with? And she pointed me to a couple of people, and I looked at Sequoia's portfolio, and I just thought it was so colorful and expressive, and she's lovely as well as a person, and so I feel like I get a little bit of my brother in the book as well.
Does she have children?
She doesn't know.
Well, she sure has children nailed, boy, let me tell you.
Yeah.
And so each page, bigger like than a dinosaur, bigger than an elephant. And he's got the city buildings, bigger than everything that's big, bigger than the ocean, the little one asks. I love you bigger than everything that's big than the sky that goes to infinity, and bigger than the waves that roll all over the ocean. And now, this is the car one. Tell us about that one.
Well, we go to visit my family in Ohio a lot, so my daughters are familiar with the drive cross country, so we see the mountains and we say, can you climb those? And the flowers and the buildings and everything is, how high is that? Can you climb it? Can you see the top of it? And everything's just about scale, so I wanted to bring that in, like this, the wonder of going places.
She loves it. She's a good traveler.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
She's not me. Oh, I drove my parents nuts. When are we going to get there? When are we going to? My father had to. You know, when you go to the Cape, you live closer to the Cape in Attleboro than I do, and I remember I lived in the western part of the state in Wilbraham, and it's just a bit of a hike to get to the Cape. Mm-hmm. And I'd be in the back seat, and now I'm getting really frustrated. It's a long trip. Finally, he said, "The first one who sees the Sagamore, the bridge, yell." So he took my mind off of it. I kept looking, and finally I saw it. He had to think of something. I was just like,
think of games along the way.
I had, Silly Putty.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, one day I was so bored in the back seat. I had no other siblings with me, and I took Silly Putty. It's it's color of our skin, and I made a long nose out of it. And I kept looking out the window at people who drove by, and they went, "Oh, that poor child."
Oh, no.
My mother was embarrassed.
That's so funny.
She said, "Jan, stop." But at least
it kept you busy.
Yeah, and then I began looking at the different license plates and things, wherever people were from. And, tell us about the clocks.
Well, that comes again from my love of astronomy and my background in that. It's one of my favorite lines in the book. It says, bigger than all of the land and the rocks, bigger than all of the time and the clocks. So, as big as you can imagine.
That clock. Remember Beauty and the Beast, the movie? For some reason, reminds me of that clock. Wasn't that Maurice Chevalier? Was he the clock?
I remember the name. I remember.
French.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Mademoiselle,
Yes.
Okay. And I love you bigger than, the screechiest crow. Who would think of that?
Yeah, that was thinking about all the different senses, thinking about not just going places, but thinking about things you can see and hear.
And the rainbow.
It's just so colorful. I love the color and brightness of the illustrations.
Were you surprised when you got this finished product how beautiful it was?
We had been in good contact along the way, and so I had seen some drafts and gotten to give her some feedback on it, and she was just wonderful.
Was it the first one she'd ever done? No, it wasn't the first.
She had done a couple of others before. Mm-hmm.
And her daughter goes, "That's pretty big." And now, who is saying this? Do you know how much I love you? You or
the daughter back to the mother now.
Okay, so the daughter said, "Do you know how much I love you?" Let's see. This is easy to read, too. Bigger than anything I can think of, bigger than anything I can dream of, and she's got everything here.
And so you think now you have that torn paper effect. You're coming back through all the adventures you had, falling back into that time.
Yes, this illustrator nailed it. Bigger than forever and ever, nighttime, bedtime. Did you read to your children when you go before bed?
Every night.
So did my mother. Mm-hmm. And I think she thought that was the only way she could, the only way she could calm me down. To go to bed.
Yeah.
And I was fascinated. And at 8 years old, one night she said, "Jan, you can read to yourself." I learned to read when I was in first grade. But did you ever hear of Thornton Burgess? He used to write, Jimmy Squirrel the Skunk and all. It was an older book. The Bobbsey twins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did you?
Vaguely. Yeah.
She would read those to me, and she would be the Grandfather Frog, whatever. So no wonder I was like, I wanted more. I didn't want her to stop.
Yeah.
Now,
well, it's fun because now she gets to read the book to me as well.
Does she read this to you?
Yeah, she'll read it to me. Mm-hmm.
And she's 8. Yep,
she can read it. Yeah, and but now we get to read it to the little one, and so I tell my other daughter that when I read this with Luna, this is for Luna. When I read this to you, this is you.
She'll be reading maybe in preschool. Is she in preschool?
She's in preschool now, yeah.
Have they taught her reading yet?
No, she sort of knows her ABCs, but not really reading yet. She just turned 4.
By the end of the time she's in kindergarten, she may read something like that.
Yeah.
We are talking with Lindsay Bartholomew, and she wrote, "I love you bigger than everything that's big." What a great book for the kids. Lindsay, how can people get in touch with you, and maybe you could do a presentation?
Sure. I do have a website for the book. It has some events that I've been planning and wanting to go to and planning on. You can also find me at Lindsay Bartholomew Books at gmail.com, and you can buy the book right now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
How about bookstores? How about indie bookstores? Are you in there?
Well, actually, the publisher I worked with was Stillwater Books in Rhode Island.
Oh, I know him. He's very much. He's been on the show. Oh, I've been to his. Did you go to his December? They have it every December. The authors fair, book fair.
This December, I have a couple things on the calendar. So
yeah, go. Mm-hmm. It is mobbed with. I mean, author to author. Elbow to elbow, the different tables, they're beautiful, beautifully set up. I couldn't possibly meet every author in there. When I went, I was astounded. And he what's his name? Oh, he owns the bookstore, and I can't think of it right now. But he'll be on the show again.
Steve?
Pete? No.
Of Stillwater?
Yeah, he's the owner of the store.
Steve and Dawn.
Steve Porter.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And Dawn, his wife.
Mm-hmm.
They own their own bookstore. And what better person than to get these type of books out?
Yes,
have you spoken there?
They were great to work with.
Oh, mm-hmm. he was a great guest.
Yeah.
Hello, Pete. Shout out to Pete. And then that December event is really an event. I remember looking at one of the authors, and I said, "I'm overwhelmed in here." She said, "So am I." But everybody's different. You have sci-fi in there. You have children's books. You have novels. You have the graphic stuff the kids are reading now. What do you think of those graphic things? The graphic books, with the pictures instead of reading in regular words.
I think it's a whole different kind of storytelling. It's really it's artistic. It's a different skill, I think, to tell those kinds of stories.
Yeah, I can't seem to. I wasn't into comic books as a kid. I'd rather read the book.
My husband is into that, and so my daughters have gotten into that kind of style as well. So we have all different kinds of genres in our house.
Do you have a lot of books, like libraries?
We have way too many books, except for not enough books.
So you grew up in Ohio?
I grew up in Ohio, yes.
Were you the only child?
I was one of three. I have two younger brothers. And one of the things that's interesting is I was actually born a little bit differently. So I was born with one finger on each hand, and you'll see in the illustrations in the book that's represented. My daughter was actually born with 3 fingers on each hand.
How did that happen?
And so, and I just always grew up with an attitude that I think my parents instilled in me, which is the assumption that you can do anything, and so can my daughter. And when I was talking with Sequoia about the illustrations, she said, "Do you want this to be you, right?" And I said, "Yeah, actually, yeah." And then I was thinking about it, this idea of an inclusive message in a book, because, and you might have an opinion on this as well with all of your background, but usually if a book is about someone with any kind of physical or otherwise perceived difference, the story is at least in part about that physical difference,
so
right? So I thought, wouldn't it be cool to have a book where there are characters with a physical difference?
Yes.
But that's not what the story's about.
No.
And so over the course of reading the book, you would notice that, these characters have, their hands are a bit different. But they're just doing their thing and living their own adventures. And you get to the end.
Notice.
And then you realize that, they just had a physical difference, and they were just doing the story, just like anybody else.
What about your other little one at home? Does she have minus some fingers?
She has 5 fingers. We actually we adopted our second daughter.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah. So we're all unique in our household.
Was it ancestral down in the family?
It was actually because my dad was actually in the Army and exposed to Agent Orange in Vietnam.
Your dad.
Mm-hmm. But the good thing is, on the inside, my brothers and I, and my daughter, everyone, my dad, we've all been entirely healthy. It's just a little bit of a physical difference.
Did he lose the fingers too?
No. He's completely fine.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Well, something. It's in a way, that both of the girls have similarity like that. they don't have to feel so different. You know, they
Right.
have each other, and I'm sure the other kids have adopted them just the same. You know,
Yeah.
they don't. They now, you wrote this book. You said I think it took you 2 years.
Well, the writing of it didn't take 2 years. Just the process of writing to finish publication.
Okay, so when did you start writing it?
Let's see, a little over 2 years ago, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, so maybe mid 2022 or so. Yeah.
Okay. Now, what gave you the? Well, we know what gave you the idea. Is there another one coming up? Usually there is with an author.
I have many ideas, and actually I have ideas for different genres as well.
Mm-hmm.
I have a goal in life. I want to live on every continent.
You live in
And
what?
I want to live on every continent.
You want to live on every continent?
Yes, and so I've lived on 4 continents so far.
Where have you lived?
Other than here, I've lived in Europe and Africa and Antarctica.
Where in Europe?
So I lived in Scotland and Ireland.
I'm Scottish.
I love it. I was Scottish in a former life. I think I love it so
you
much.
You were or you weren't?
I'm teasing, but I think I was Scottish in a former life because of how much I love it.
You fit right in.
Yeah. So I lived in Edinburgh for a little while. Then in Ireland, I was a volunteer teacher for a year in Namibia, in Africa. So I lived in a rural village teaching science and math. And then I lived on a research base in Antarctica for a couple of weeks. And
how did you meet your hubby?
So we met in Miami, where I worked at the Museum of Science in Miami, and he was born and raised in Miami, and we just met through a friend of a friend.
This is amazing. What a story to tell.
Yeah.
What a memoir you should write.
Yeah, so I have blogs, I have notes, I have journals, and it just needs to be into a book.
Now, the next book coming up, is it anything like this type of thing?
Well, I have another idea for another book around my second daughter, and I want her to be the focus of another book. So I have, but that's sort of only in my head and notes so far.
That'll be out. So in the December Authors Expo you'll be going to,
yes.
You'll be with this book.
I'll be with that book, yes.
They used to do it at the, Paul, I don't know if you remember, it was in Cranston. But the building, they had to shut it down. When I went, it was in Cranston.
Mm-hmm.
It was getting old. And now it's at a beautiful motel. Mm-hmm. I forgot what town it's in, but we might get to it. You don't know this December. Depends on how everybody's feeling, for gosh sakes.
Yeah. Stay healthy.
The 2024 has been a wash for me.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been so sick in my life. Now, when you speak, where do you like to speak? In the indie book stores, or where do you like to go?
Well, since this book only came out about maybe a month or 2 ago, this is all still pretty new for me. Yeah. But my background is in science communication, so I've done a lot of teaching. I've done a lot of leading of programs and workshops for scientists and the general public, and so I just love to tell stories and talk to people. So I'm pretty comfortable with that.
Because there are an awful lot of. I work as a publicist for authors. I help them get out there, and
I would love to know any advice you have as a new author. I would love to know any advice.
There are so many. Oh my gosh! From where you are in Attleboro, I mean, all over Massachusetts, we have in this area, Worcester and everywhere. They have tons of the independent indie bookstores that are coming up, and they love. I have a special favorite in. I'll give her a shout out. Webster. It's called the Book Lovers Gourmet. And she owns it. And, I mean, I've had more guests on who have presented there. Have you ever heard of Tatnuck Bookseller?
I haven't.
In Westboro?
Mm-mm.
Oh, you love it. Not only is it a bookstore, they also sell clothing. They sell some tchotchkes, cute things like that. But a whole children's section, the teens, the adults. And then they have a huge event room in the back. You can choose to present there, or some beginners like to sit in the kind of towards the front, and with a desk where people come in and say hello and sign the book if they get bought. The event planner there is a lot of fun. You'd like her, and so is the one in Webster. There are so many of bookstores. I can't tell you how many there are around here, and you're near Rhode Island too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Right near the border of Rhode Island. And my husband and I are bookstore addicts, so any new ones we'd love to hear about.
Oh my gosh. I have, well, of course, I have to know all of them and make sure my author knows who they are, who they connect with, and they agree with when they can appear and go. It's a lot of fun because you get to not only maybe read your book or hold it up. The kids are invited, of course. Have you tried schools?
And actually, I am working on some times to go to both my daughter's schools to read there, and I actually had a book release party at a place called Lit Arts, Rhode Island. Are you familiar with that?
What's it called?
Lit Arts, Rhode Island.
No.
It's basically a community of artists and basically supporting writers of all kinds, and it's great. And so we had a book release party there, and my daughter and I read the book together, back and forth.
Back and forth, a page each?
Yep.
A lot of the bookstores, like the one who owns it in Webster, it's like she has a cafe set up so people can grab their coffee and sit down and enjoy listening to you. At Tatnock Bookseller, you could also grab a sandwich, cafe, and then come enjoy. I mean, everything. They have everything you could think of in there. There are so many in Worcester is a biggie, and now they're branching out in Boston. Oh, of course, they've got them in Boston. Now you work in Cambridge, but you take the train.
Yes.
If you were to give a presentation in further than say Upton, really further, out like in Newton or Boston, would you take the train?
I would take the train.
You would take a train.
Yeah.
You would take the train. Have you ever taken the girls with you?
Yeah, usually on a weekend we would make a whole family trek into the city.
This is really important, I think, because especially if you're let's say you're at a bookstore and you're giving a presentation and people are looking at this book and they see you with your one or two little girls, whoever you bring, and they say, this mother's really got it together. She knows what the kids love. And this book, I Love You Bigger Than Everything That's Big. We're talking with Lindsay Bartholomew. What a beautiful name. What is Bartholomew?
It's actually Americanized Italian.
It's Italian?
It's De Bartolomeo was the name.
What was your maiden name?
That's my maiden name, actually.
Oh, that's your maiden name.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, my dad's family is from Sicily originally, so it's
Sicilian.
It's yeah.
Well, guess who just put out a book? Who's Sicilian? Think of movies. Think of thrillers, and really, really.
I don't know. Who do you mean?
Al Pacino.
Oh.
He has a book out now. I just borrowed it from a library, and it's called Sonny Boy. It takes you through he grew up in the poorest sections of New York. I mean, and it takes you through, it wasn't always nice, as he became an actor, and what he had to go through. He's Sicilian, Al Pacino.
I don't think I knew he was Sicilian, specifically.
Yeah, and of course, the ironic thing is, I think his grandfather's, either where he grew up or his last name was Corleone, where the movie takes.
Yep. So,
guys, there's a little tip from Al Pacino. He's got a book out called Sonny Boy. So when you read that, now when you go and you give a presentation and a talk and all, how many books do you leave for the store? One or a few?
It would be a few. I mean, if it's for a school library, I've left one at school libraries.
Sure.
But yeah, really, I just would love to get it out there. At this point, I'm kind of feeling my way around this new author.
When do you go to libraries and present? Do you go there too?
I haven't been to a library to present yet, but I am doing. It's at the Rochambeau Library.
Where's that?
Should know this off the top of my head. It's November 17th. There's an event.
In Massachusetts? Rochambeau?
Rochambeau.
Where? What town? No, don't remember.
I'd have to look it up.
Okay. Because when you go to libraries, always leave a copy. They should. We do right down the street. That's why I was asking you to bring a copy. They have what's called a dedicated local authors section, And many people who watch the show, oh, I want to read that book. They go down and they look at the exhibit. They find your book.
Mm-hmm.
Always try to leave a book at the library. That's a good thing to do, because someone's going to see it on exhibit right there, and they're going to say, "Oh, I saw her on Jan Lewis's Be My Guest, and I want to." You like how badly do you want to get out there with your book? Really bad? Like
Really? Yeah.
You
I
really
want to get it out there.
Do you have the time though with your little ones?
Time is really the challenge, but I do want to get out there. It's like a whole other part-time job to do this, but I do want to do it.
Does your husband work full-time?
Mm-hmm.
He works full-time. Okay. So you will find times to work around it to get, and if someone contacts
Absolutely.
you.
Yeah.
One more time before we have to close, how can they get a hold of you?
I have a website, iloveyoubiggerthan.com, and you can find the book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or the Stillwater Books Rhode Island Press website. And you can email me if you have any questions at lindsaybartholomewbooks@gmail.com.
Where are you going to be next? Or not? You don't know yet next.
I am going to be at the ARIA, the Association of Rhode Island Authors, on December 7th.
And then that place you just mentioned, it sounds French.
Yeah.
Rochambeau. It's a library?
I believe, and I can't remember off the top of my head.
That's okay, I have to too.
The details of where it is, but it's on November 17th.
And you're going to speak there.
It'll be an author event, so I'll have a booth.
So these are the only places. Before this, have you spoken at any other?
I did an interview with Bruce Newberry at WADK Radio. This past week. I think it's going to air this coming week.
Excellent. You're going to be airing, once you're on YouTube, folks, you know you are all over the world. I have a former classmate from high school in Japan. She watches it. People in Canada.
Love it.
YouTube will take you everywhere.
Around
so
the world,
I hope you
I
enjoy it. And we'll have you back again.
I hope
The next book. Come on now, let me know.
So.
All right, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Riding on a shooting star, heading out toward a dream. Tomorrow's even closer than it seems.